Welcome to Stone Cottage Adventures. This is the home that my daughter and her family will be renting. It's a duplex, and this is where they're going to stay while they're deciding where they want to be. And our video today will be home tour of her main floor, and we will also be looking at how the dining room has evolved. They only moved in a month ago, and we'll show you what we've done. And then the last part of the video will be tips and tricks for things that I routinely do and how I approach decorating a new space. Here we are inside. The house was built in 1900, and obviously it was rewired much later. And okay, we've embraced the architecture. This is their family room, their living room, and this house could only belong to my daughter, Trisha. If you hear a little noise, it's the kitty. So we've got the kitty going here. Trisha has done a wonderful job over the years. She's still relatively young, but she's done a wonderful job of collecting original art. I purchased this watercolor at a flea market in Geneva, and above it is just an interesting little modern piece. They work really well together because the colors go so well together. So we've done that. And over here, the only piece of furniture that's new that she purchased new was this bookshelf. Everything else is an old family piece or a thrifted piece. On top is a Belgian lithograph that hung in my mother's home for years. I'm not quite sure where it came from. And items from all over the world. Trisha has traveled a great deal. She lived in Russia for 9 months, and she lived in Kazakhstan for 9 months. And so she's got a lot of Russian and Kazakh things on her shelves, and a collection of old books. Now, the rug and the chairs belong to my mother, and the sofa is kind of a placeholder. When they moved, they left their sofa, and this one was just one that we had around, so it doesn't match perfectly, but it certainly works. And then over here, this was a piece of art that she bought off the street in Russia, as I recall. And this is the lamp I made for her. At the end of the video, I'll share how I made this lamp out of napkins. But the blue works really well with the pictures and with what she's got going on here. Now, this room is the entire house is woefully underwired. So we've done a lot of candle sconces to help brighten the room. And Trisha is the mother of 4 young children. So there are children's books. I think there's a book on the chair here. And over in the corner, that's the Fisher-Price corner with all kinds of toys. And in a previous video on decorating walls, you probably saw this black piece with the television above it, and we had hung shelves above it. That was not an option here because this is a rental and they'll only be here a short period of time. And they're blankets for when you want to get comfy. And this is the room that we've had the most fun with, which is the the dining room / music room. It's a very musical family. Their 2 favorite things to do: make music and eat. So I will show you exactly the progress of the room. This was my old piano, a family dining table, the family rocking chair. This rocking chair has a wonderful story. It's an old platform rocker from the 1800s that was given to my grandfather. He was a doctor, and he stayed. It used to be that when you were really sick, you didn't go to the hospital. The doctor came and stayed with you through the crisis. And he sat one night taking care of a woman who was very sick. And she came through the crisis just fine. And in the morning, she thanked him so much. And he said, oh, it wasn't bad at all to stay the night because I had such a comfortable chair. So she gave him the rocker. And here is the corner that we filled up. And another original piece of art that was a family piece, not the world's finest quality, a little still life, but it was painted by Cousin Lydia, who was a cousin connected by marriage to, anyway, my grandmother's sister. So really kind of an old piece. And then above it, above the piano, another Russian piece of art that she bought on the street. And she brought these things home and had them stretched and didn't quite get around to framing them. And then another piece of art that I actually painted for her. You can't see it very well, but you can see it truly is the music corner. There's the piano, the cello, a little yellow ukulele, and up above it, what's called a dumbra, which is a little stringed instrument that is common in Kazakhstan. And she bought that there. She imagined herself learning to play the dumbra, but that didn't really happen. And then we have taken the blue china that she liked, and you can see the Russian pieces that she bought and that we've added to. And I will share the progress of this room, and you'll hear the stories of all of these things. And there's the kitchen back there. You can see the kitchen from here, so we've made sure to put, a little copper and some greenery on top of the refrigerator. Those things stay out of the way and make it look a little more festive in there. And then back over here in this corner, this is the heater, an old house with I think they called it steam heat or something. And so that gave you a piece of furniture in the corner. And then we decorated around it, and it ended up being a fun little spot with some Russian Matryoshka dolls. Of course, you have to have those if you've been there. And then we have the table set for a little tea, just the two of us. The kids are in school right now. Her kids are 1.5 years up through 11, so they're a young family. I'm going to show you one other thing. There's Kitty. That's Cheez-It. And there's a picture of a cat there that looks so much like Cheez-It. She did that when she was like 12 or 13 years old, and it looks just like little Cheez-It. And you can see his tail, but it looks a lot like him. And I've included a green bottle that echoes the bottle in Cousin Lydia's still life. Now I will share with you the progress of this room, how this room evolved, and how we took advantage of the existing architecture in the room. Now, Tricia and I drove up with the children, and we left her husband to meet the movers and get everything unloaded. So when we arrived, the piano was in the dining room because that was the only interior wall that seemed logical for the piano. And of course, the dining table was here, with the dining table in here. You see the top of Gracie's head. She's here with me at the moment. And then the platform rocker went over in the corner because that was the only place they could think of to put it. And these chairs, they found literally on the curb. They sold their dining room set from Arizona to have one less thing to move. And so they needed new chairs, so they just bought some on the curb. And the thing about this room, we have this kind of industrial lamp, which doesn't really go with the house, but that's life. We have this wonderful original plate rail trim all the way around the room. Looks like they either added or replaced the crown molding. And Unfortunately, someone painted it white. It would have been better. I think it's probably some kind of synthetic material, not natural wood. And rather than staining it, they painted it white. Personally, I would have liked it painted dark brown to go with all the other trim in the room, but really wonderful arts and crafts trim, wonderful tall floor moldings. The only two outlets in the room. So here's a double right here, a single over here. And the other feature in the room, that's the heater. At least it's got something on top and we can treat it like a piece of furniture. But that's what we're going to work with and try to see if we can do a little better. Now what we started with was hanging the art that we thought should go in here and placing in pieces that we already had. So these two candles were left over from Trisha's wedding, and this little casket, so we call it the casket, picked up at a thrift store in Arizona. And these were more thrift store pieces along with the Russian pieces that Trisha had. And this piece just seemed like a dining room piece with food. And there's another little thrift store bowl that Trisha bought, and a little piece of original art, a little tiny. Get you another look at that. It's just a tiny little piece of a little oil painting, so you can see how small it is, just a little tiny thing. And the sketch of the old man. Now, Trisha's husband did not like it, and so we propped it up here to see if he would complain about it, which he did not. He didn't even notice. I think it was in the bedroom before and he didn't like that, so we put it in someplace different so he wouldn't notice it. And then, of course, the Matryoshka dolls came out, and this was a good spot because it's high enough that the little ones can't reach it, and out of the way enough that people forget about it. It was on a shelf above the television set, which constantly their eyes were drawn to it, and they always were wanting to play with it, which is a mess if you've ever had one. And then just other little random pieces that had come from thrift stores. When Trisha was in Russia, I gave her some money and I said, buy some things that are beautiful that you will love. So she ended up buying a couple of original oil paintings and some hand-painted blue china from Russia. And so she bought these 3 pieces on the right. The little lidded container was a gift to me from some Russians, and she also bought the vase in Russia. I'll turn this over so you can see. Anyway, so Trisha had been using these pieces in her home since she got back from Russia years ago. And I was at the thrift store looking, when they first moved into their house in Arizona, looking for some things to fill things out. And I came across this big, rather awkward, what obviously is supposed to be a candle holder. And it was, as I recall, $3.99. And that's huge. You can see, there's my hand. This thing is huge. And why was it so cheap? Well, the reason it was so cheap is because it had a pretty serious chip in it. And I wasn't sure Trisha would like it, but I brought it home and she said, oh, I love that. I love blue and white. And I'd never heard her say that before. So that's when I went on a mission to buy as much blue and white as possible. These were the thrift store pieces that I started buying for her, and we ended up with some dishes that she did not want because she said my children will break those. But now that we had a plate rail, I thought, she might actually enjoy these. So I brought them and we decorated with them. When they were still living in Arizona, I went out, I made a point of going and looking for blue and white. I got blue and white dishes. The one on the left is a little blue onion that's a Japanese piece, inexpensive Japanese. Fitz and Floyd, the dark blue plate, just a little bowl. I think that maybe is made in Holland. There's her Russian piece and another piece of the Fitz and Floyd. There's her Russian picture. This one actually was from some Russian judges that stayed with us in 2001. The Fitz and Floyd, the Russian that she bought in Moscow. And that is a Coalport piece in the corner there. There's the little teacup and saucer from the Fitz and Floyd. It's a little Nico piece and a vase that I bought for, that might have been a big purchase, like $6.99 or something. And more of the plates on the plate rail. There's my original thrift store purchase and the green bottle that echoes the still life. And that's a saucer that she picked up at the Goodwill in Arizona. And Spode and a little Portuguese pitcher. And a little piece of Johnson & Brothers Holland. And an Italian plate. And another little low container. And the crystal from my wedding gifts. And there we go, down here. Well, we like the picture there, but the wall seems kind of blank, so some family sconces would be a good addition. Let's try those. Yeah, that helped to fill up the room a little bit. Those are family pieces. They were a wedding present to Trisha's grandparents when they got married in 1949. So adding some candles is going to help light up the room. The most obvious way to add life to a room is to add some plants and some fresh fruit. And you can see in this room some ferns, some other plants that we've put around the room, a little bit of greenery everywhere. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is this particular grouping here in this vase. Now, this is a bunch of flowers. Instead of buying the individual stems, I buy the bunch. And this one, you know, I always wait for the 50% off sales at the craft stores, but this one was about $15, and it has 4 greenery stems and like 6 or 8 hydrangea flowers in it. It has a very nice real look, and the best values are those bunches that you find. This one is a very interesting one. We needed behind the rocker, we had kind of this empty space, and the obvious choice would be a large natural plant, but it's a dark spot, so I needed something artificial, and I needed something tall, and I wanted something that had a little gravitas to it, a little mass to it. And we purchased a plaster column that was just white, you know, white cheap. And it was, I think, under $19. And then we went to HomeSense and we bought this tall vase for $22. And we bought a fern, again, 50% off for $10. And this is a faux twisted willow. And it was $5. So we got this piece that goes, you know, as high as the plate rail for about $56 plus tax. Really good value and adds a lot of interest visually. The next thing we got was just some greenery here to go in the casket on the piano, and we spread it out. It has a long stem that I had to bend a little bit, and then we added some moss to it to kind of fill it out so it doesn't, you don't see all the plastic and so forth. But that was pretty inexpensive too. I'm thinking that was like maybe $7 or $8 for the whole thing. The next thing we added was some faux boxwood, and I buy the garlands. The garland was, I think, about $10, but I take it and cut it into individual pieces. And over in this corner, we've added the greenery, of course, in that corner, gives it a little bit of height. But we also have added a faux orchid. And I like to have faux on hand. And, you know, in my own home, I'll run out to the garden, of course, in New Jersey. Not much is blooming right now. It's not spring yet there. But if I don't have greenery that I can pick at the moment for whatever reason, I like to use faux greenery. Now, this is the living room, and I want to take a minute to talk about the living room. And this is the lamp that I made for my daughter, and it pulls out the blue, kind of interesting in the picture, her Russian picture, and it also gets the blue from the dining room and brings more of it into the living room. Now, how I made this is I started with a vase that was in my basement. First thing I did was I got some chalk paint, and I am using literally a napkin. The one on the right, which is this cocktail napkin that I'm going to be using, and I was trying to decide between that and that's a little guest hand towel. And do notice how it has a little bit of a blue border on that cocktail napkin, which is the one I'm using, and I'm going to take advantage of that on my lamp. Now, painting it, usually it takes about 2 coats, and the easiest thing to do is just to tape off the metal because I wanted the metal to not have paint on it. Apply 2 coats. I don't worry about whether or not it cracks or if it perfectly covers because I'm going to be covering this up, but 2 coats is a good thing. And while I'm waiting for it to dry and remove the tape, I begin cutting out the napkin. And this is a 2-ply napkin, so I remove the back. You can see how at the top I have lined up that blue edge, which is really pretty. And to paint it, I am, I'm applying it in kind of a random look. And I take it and put on, paint on the Mod Podge. Then I carefully arrange how I want to place it on. And once I have it determined, I cover it up with some more Mod Podge. And by the time I'm finished, I will have 4 or 5 layers of the Mod Podge on top of it. That's all there is to it. And didn't take long. It's kind of therapeutic and fun to work on it. When I looked at it, it was a little stark in my opinion. So I took my clear wax, mixed it with some of the white paint, and then waxed over the top of it so it would kind of mute the colors a little bit. When I use dark wax, it makes it look aged and soiled. When I use whitened wax, it makes it look kind of worn and faded. And I wanted this to look old and faded and worn. And there's the look. And I found this lampshade for $4.99 at the thrift store, and it worked perfectly. And here it is in my daughter's home. This has been a fun video to make. I hope you've gotten some ideas for things that you can do. If you have enjoyed the video, if you learned anything, gotten any inspiration, hit the like button. It really helps the video. You know how it is with the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, I would love to hear your comments. I learn so much from my viewers. But if you have any tips and tricks that you can share with us, that would be terrific. And if you're getting to this video earlier, you may want to come back in a week and read other people's comments and we could get a conversation going. I really appreciate you coming and watching the video today, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.